The anniversary dinner was being held at La Maison, the kind of restaurant where reservations required 3 months' notice and entrees started at $85. My parents had rented the private dining room for their closest family and friends. About 30 people gathered to celebrate 4 decades of marriage. I arrived exactly on time, wearing a simple black dress I'd owned for years. Mom's eyes swept over me with barely concealed disappointment. "Laura, you made it." "Of course. It's your anniversary. I wasn't sure you'd come. You've been so absent lately." "I've been busy with work." "Work?" She said it like the word tasted bitter. "Yes. Your work." I didn't respond. There was no point. We'd had this conversation a dozen times and it always ended the same way. Inside the private dining room, the celebration was already in full swing. My sister Diane held court at one end of the table, her husband beside her, both of them dressed like they'd stepped out of a luxury magazine. My brother Kenneth and his wife were showing off photos of their new vacation home. Aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone successful, everyone accomplished, everyone fitting the family mold perfectly. And then there was me. I found my assigned seat, at the far end of the table naturally, and sat down quietly. The server brought champagne. Conversations flowed around me, occasionally including me but mostly flowing past like I was a stone in a stream. "Laura." My aunt descended on me. "How are you, dear? Still doing that computer thing?" "Investment analysis," I clarified. "Yes." "Oh, that sounds complicated. Are you making enough to live on?" "I manage." "Well, good for you. It must be hard not having the stability your siblings have. But I admire your independence." She patted my shoulder and moved on before I could respond. This was my role in the family, the well-meaning failure. The one who tried hard but never quite made it. The one everyone felt vaguely sorry for. Dinner was served. Multiple courses, each more elaborate than the last. Between the second and third courses, Dad stood up, champagne glass in hand. "I want to thank everyone for being here tonight," he began. 40 years ago, Margaret and I started this journey together. We built a family, built a life, and I'm proud of what we've accomplished. Everyone applauded. "Our children have grown into remarkable adults," Dad continued. "Diane is a successful attorney at one of the city's top firms. Kenneth runs his own consulting business that's thriving. We're so proud of them both." More applause. Diane smiled graciously. Kenneth nodded in acknowledgement. Dad's eyes landed on me. "And Laura?" "Well, Laura's still finding her way. We're hopeful that she'll find her path eventually." Polite, pitying applause. I took a sip of water and said nothing. "But tonight isn't about our children," Dad continued. "It's about Margaret and me and the life we've built together. Thank you all for celebrating with us." The dinner continued. Between courses, people came by to chat with my parents, to reminisce, to toast their success. I stayed in my seat, occasionally making small talk with the cousin next to me, mostly observing. Then, as dessert was being served, Dad stood up again. This time his expression was serious. "Before we have cake, I need to address something." He looked directly at me. "Laura, can you stand up, please?" My stomach tightened. This wasn't planned. This wasn't part of the celebration. I stood slowly. Everyone was watching now. "Laura," Dad said, his voice taking on that tone I knew too well, disappointed parent trying to sound reasonable. "Your mother and I have been discussing your situation. We've been supporting you financially for years now. Helping with your rent, covering your car payments, supplementing your income." "Dad," I started. "Let me finish." He held up his hand. "We've been happy to help. That's what family does. But we've realized we're not actually helping you. We're enabling you. We're preventing you from growing up and taking responsibility for your own life." The room had gone completely silent. "You're 32 years old," Dad continued. "You have no stable career. No real savings. No plan for your future. You drift from project to project, calling it investment analysis, but never building anything concrete. And we've been subsidizing this failure to launch." "Robert," Mom said gently, standing up beside him. "Let's not call it failure. What else would you call it?" Dad asked. "She's 32 and still dependent on us. Diane was making 6 figures by 30. Kenneth started his business at 28. Laura is still asking us for help with basic expenses. I haven't asked you for money in 2 years, I said quietly. Because we've been automatically transferring it, Mom said. Every month $3,000 into your account. To help you survive while you figure out your life. Wait, what? You've been sending me money? I asked. Of course we have, Dad said. How else would you afford your apartment? Your car? Your lifestyle? We know how much money you make from your little projects, Laura. It's not enough to live on. How much do you think I make? I asked. Does it matter? Diane chimed in from her seat. The point is it's not enough. And Mom and Dad have been covering the difference. For years, Kenneth added. While the rest of us have been supporting ourselves. I looked around the table. Everyone was nodding, agreeing, looking at me with a mixture of pity and judgment. This ends today, Dad announced. Laura, your mother and I have decided to cut you off completely. No more monthly transfers. No more helping with bills. No more enabling your failed life. It's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. Robert, maybe we should discuss this privately, one of my uncles suggested. No, Dad said firmly. I want everyone to hear this. I want everyone to understand that we're doing this out of love. Tough love, but love nonetheless. Laura needs to grow up. And we're not helping her by coddling her. Mom nodded, tears in her eyes. We're sorry, honey. But your father is right. This is for your own good. Diane raised her glass. About time. I love you, Laura, but you've been coasting for too long. I'll drink to that, Kenneth agreed. The table murmured approval. My successful siblings, my proud parents, my accomplished extended family, all united in their belief that they were doing the right thing. Saving me from myself. Teaching me responsibility. I pulled out my phone slowly. Laura, what are you doing? Mom asked. You said you've been sending me $3,000 a month, I said. For how long? 3 years, Dad said. $36,000 a year. Over $100,000 total. Money we could have used for our retirement. Money we spent on you because we thought you needed it. Where did you send it? I asked. What do you mean where? To your checking account. The one you've had since college. Account ending in 4721? Yes. Why does it matter? I pulled up my banking app. The checking account they were talking about, the one I'd opened at 18 and barely used anymore. I scrolled through the transaction history. There they were. Monthly deposits of $3,000 regular as clockwork for the past 3 years. 36 deposits. $108,000. Money I'd never touched. Never noticed. Because I hadn't checked that account in over 2 years. You've been depositing money into an account I don't use, I said. What? Mom looked confused. This account. I turned the phone toward them, showing the balance. $108,247.83. I haven't accessed this account since I was 25. I didn't know you were making deposits. I certainly wasn't spending them. Dad squinted at the screen. Then how have you been paying your bills? With money from my primary accounts. What primary accounts? Diane asked. Laura, what's going on? I closed the old checking account app and opened another one. My actual banking app. The one I used daily. The one connected to my investment portfolio and business accounts. I pulled up my primary savings account and turned the phone toward my parents. The balance showed $127,438,922.19. The room went silent. That's not possible, Dad whispered. It's very possible, I said calmly. Laura, is that real? Mom's voice was shaking. Is that your account? Yes. $127,438,922.19. As of this morning's market close. Diane stood up abruptly. Let me see that. I handed her my phone. She stared at the screen, her face going pale. Account name, Laura Zhang primary account. Balance, $127,438,922.19. Investment holdings, $2.8 billion. $2.8 billion? Kenneth's voice cracked. That's not possible. That can't be real. It's real, I said. I've been managing a private investment portfolio for the past 10 years. I started with $50,000 I saved from my first job. I've been growing it steadily ever since. Dad grabbed the phone from Diane. He stared at the screen, his mouth opening and closing soundlessly. You have $127 million in your savings account? He finally managed. That's just liquid savings. My total net worth is approximately $3.4 billion, depending on current market valuations. The word billion seemed to break something in the room. People started talking all at once, questions and exclamations overlapping. How is this possible? Where did you get that money? Is this legal? Laura, what did you do? My phone started ringing. I looked at the screen. Goldstein Private Wealth Management. Excuse me, I said, answering it. This is Laura. Ms. Zhang. The voice belonged to James Thornton, my wealth advisor. I'm so sorry to call during your evening, but I wanted to confirm. Did you authorize a $10 million transfer to your philanthropic foundation? I did. This morning. Excellent. And the quarterly dividend distribution is scheduled for next week. At current holdings, you're looking at approximately $47 million. Shall we reinvest as usual, or would you like to review allocation strategies? I was aware of everyone listening. Reinvest as usual, James. We can review the portfolio next month. Perfect. One more thing. The board meeting for your company acquisitions is scheduled for Thursday. Will you be attending in person or via video? In person. I'll be at the office Wednesday to prepare. Wonderful. Have a lovely evening, Ms. Zhang. I hung up. The silence in the room was absolute. Quarterly dividends, Mom repeated slowly. $47 million. Every quarter, I confirmed. It varies based on performance, but that's the average. You make $47 million every 3 months? Diane's voice was hollow. From passive investment income, yes. My active management fees and business profits are separate. Kenneth sat down heavily. What business? I own controlling stakes in 11 companies. Technology, manufacturing, real estate. I also manage investment portfolios for high net worth clients, though I'm selective about who I work with. The little projects, Dad whispered. Your investment analysis. That was all real. Every word. I tried to tell you years ago. You weren't interested. You assumed I was struggling and stopped listening. But we were sending you money, Mom protested. You were accepting it. I wasn't accepting it. You were depositing it without asking me. Into an account I'd stopped using. I gestured at the phone Dad still held. You can scroll through the transactions. None of that money has been touched. Every deposit is still there, plus interest. Diane grabbed the phone back and scrolled frantically. She's right. Every single deposit is here. She didn't spend any of it. So what have you been living on? Dad asked. My investment income. My business profits. My actual wealth, which I've been building for a decade while you all assumed I was failing. But you dress so simply, Mom said. You drive a regular car. You live in that modest apartment. I dress comfortably. I drive a reliable car. And I live in a penthouse apartment that I own outright in a building I own outright, in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the city. I paused. I live simply because I prefer it. Not because I can't afford anything else. Why didn't you tell us? Kenneth demanded. Why let us think you were struggling? I tried to tell you. Multiple times. When I made my first million, I called Dad to share the news. He told me to be careful about scams and pyramid schemes. When I bought my first company, I invited you all to the signing ceremony. Nobody came. When I tried to explain what I did, you changed the subject or gave me pitying looks. We didn't know, Mom said weakly. You didn't ask. You made assumptions based on how I looked, how I lived, and you stopped there. You decided I was failing, and you built an entire narrative around that decision without ever checking if it was true. But tonight, Dad said, we were going to cut you off. We were going to stop sending money. Money I didn't need and wasn't using. Yes. I looked around the table at all the shocked faces. You were going to cut me off to teach me responsibility. To force me to grow up. To stop enabling my failed life. Laura, we were just trying to help. Were you? Or were you trying to fix me? To mold me into something that matched your definition of success? Kept my voice level calm. You made this announcement publicly at your anniversary dinner in front of everyone. You wanted witnesses to your tough love. You wanted everyone to see you being responsible parents. That's not, Dad started. But here's what everyone actually saw. You tried to cut off a daughter who has a 9-figure savings account. You tried to teach responsibility to someone who manages a $3.4 billion portfolio. You tried to force growth on someone who's been financially independent since her mid-20s. The room was silent except for someone's uncomfortable cough. I don't understand, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. Why live like you do? Why not show us? Why not let us know you were successful? Because this, I gestured around the room, is exactly what I wanted to avoid. The judgment. The questions. The assumption that there must be something wrong or strange or suspicious about my success. Nobody thinks that, Diane protested weakly. Don't they? 5 minutes ago, you were all celebrating Mom and Dad's decision to cut me off. You were toasting to tough love and responsibility. You were agreeing that I needed to grow up. And now what? Now you're what? Impressed? Confused? Angry that I didn't tell you sooner? Nobody answered. I built something extraordinary, I continued. I did it quietly on my own terms without fanfare or validation seeking. I didn't need you to know about it for it to be real. I didn't need your approval for it to matter. But we're your family, Mom said. Exactly. You're my family. Which means you should have known me well enough to realize I wasn't struggling. You should have trusted me enough to believe me when I tried to share my success. You should have respected me enough not to make assumptions about my life. Dad set my phone down on the table carefully. What do you want from us, Laura? Nothing, I said honestly. I don't need your money. I don't need your help. I don't need your approval. I just wanted you to see me. Really see me. Not the version of me you invented in your heads. We see you now, Kenneth said quietly. Do you? Or do you just see a bank balance? Numbers on a screen that don't match the narrative you'd built. That's not fair, Diane said. We're trying to process this. Take your time. I picked up my phone. I'm going to head out. Let you all celebrate your anniversary without this distraction. Laura, don't go, Mom pleaded. We should talk about this. We just did. You announced publicly that you were cutting me off. I responded by showing you why that was unnecessary. Now I'm leaving before this turns into more of a scene than it already is. I walked toward the door. My aunt caught my arm. Laura, wait. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. What you've built is incredible. Thank you, I said. But I have to ask, why not tell us? Why keep it secret? I looked back at the table. At my parents still in shock. At my siblings struggling to process. At the extended family whispering among themselves. Because the moment people know you have money, I said, everything changes. They treat you differently. They expect things. They make assumptions. And I didn't want that. I just wanted to be Laura. To build my business, live my life, and have relationships that weren't defined by my bank balance. And now, she asked. Now everyone knows. And we'll see what happens next. I left the restaurant and walked to my car. A 3-year-old Honda that worked perfectly fine and had never broken down. I sat in the driver's seat for a moment, processing what had just happened. My phone buzzed. A text from Diane. Can we talk? Really talk? Then Kenneth, I owe you an apology. Several actually. Then Mom, please don't hate us. We love you. We just didn't understand. Then Dad, I was wrong. About everything. Can we start over? I stared at the messages, feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Anger at how they'd treated me. Sadness at being so misunderstood for so long. Relief that the secret was finally out. Uncertainty about what came next. I texted back a group message. I don't hate anyone. But I need time. Let's talk next week. Because here's the thing about having $3.4 billion. It doesn't make family relationships less complicated. It doesn't solve hurt feelings or undo years of assumptions. It doesn't automatically create the understanding and respect I'd always wanted. But it did make one thing crystal clear. I didn't need to be fixed. I didn't need to be saved. I didn't need to be molded into someone else's definition of success. I was already successful. Had been for years. And now finally my family knew it too. 3 days later I met Dad for coffee. He looked tired, older somehow. I've been thinking about what you said, he began. About how we assumed instead of asking. About how we built a narrative about your life without checking if it was true. And I prompted. And you were right. We did that. I did that. He wrapped his hands around his coffee cup. I thought I was being a good father. Protecting you. Helping you. But I was actually just not seeing you. Why didn't you see me? Because you were quiet about your success. You didn't fit the mold I understood. Diane is aggressive, confident, loud about her achievements. Kenneth is the same way. You were different. Quieter. And I interpreted quiet as struggling. Quiet isn't struggling, Dad. I know that now. He looked up at me. Can you forgive me? I can forgive you, I said. But I need you to actually change. To actually see me. To trust me when I say I'm doing well instead of assuming you know better. I will. I promise. And Dad, you can keep the $108,000 you deposited in my old account. Consider it a gift. Use it for your retirement or donate it to charity or do whatever you want with it. I don't need it. Laura. I mean it. You were trying to help even if I didn't need the help. Keep the money. Just promise me you'll stop assuming you know what I need before asking me. I promise, he said quietly. Over the next few weeks I had similar conversations with Mom, with Diane, with Kenneth. Some were harder than others. Some people got it faster than others. But slowly, gradually, we began rebuilding our relationships on a foundation of honesty instead of assumptions. My parents started asking about my work. Really asking with genuine curiosity. Diane stopped offering career advice and started asking for investment tips. Kenneth admitted he'd been intimidated by my success, which was why he'd been so dismissive of it. We weren't perfect. Old habits lingered. But we were trying. And that anniversary dinner, as awkward and painful as it had been, turned out to be the catalyst we needed. Because sometimes people need to see the truth. Really see it undeniably and publicly before they can accept it. I'd spent years being invisible, being misunderstood, being underestimated. But I wasn't invisible anymore. And I was never going to be underestimated again.